Hello, everybody. Welcome to another wonderful session of ELSA Connect. ELSA Connect is an initiative of ELSA Bangalore, which was started to stay connected during the pandemic. And now this is a beautiful, safe, and loving space for the entire sisterhood here in Bangalore and even outside to share and grow and be themselves. So here we are, and over to you, Monica, to introduce our lovely speaker for today.
Thanks, Tanya, and welcome everyone to this session. So we finally have Suki. Been trying to catch her for the last 6 months, ever since we started ELSA Connect, and she was continuously evasive, and finally we managed to get her. So welcome, Suki, and I'm so glad you were able to make the time for this. While Suki was in China, I've been following her Facebook posts and seeing the amount of depth that she was going into about different aspects of Chinese culture. And I've been quite intrigued by her travels there and all the insights that she was getting. So what Suki is going to be sharing with us is really the similarities that she saw between India and China. And I'm sure that's going to be a really interesting and insightful session. So Suki and I are the same batch and the same section and the same subject from college. And we have a few more from our class here, which is Charu's there, and I think a few more might join. Madhu is there, and Madhulika is there from the 84 batch. So looking forward to hearing your insights, Suki. Over to you.
Thanks, Monica, and thanks, Tanya. Just adding a bit to what Monica said, like it was ages back that she said, hey, listen, why don't you come on to this? And for one reason or the other, I just wasn't ready and I didn't know what I would talk about. And then finally, I wasn't able to escape. And then now I realize that, listen, I love China.
Not too audible, Suki. I'm not able to hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
Slightly.
Yeah, it's audible to me.
It's audible to you?
It's audible to us.
Because Monica is very audible to me. Okay, let's just go on. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, now listen, I must give you a caveat before I start, and that is I tend to speak very fast. And even when I try to speak slowly, I forget what I'm saying. So, I mean, we just have to kind of deal with that. So anyway, before I start about China, I just want to give you say a little bit about, why I went there. And, I did, as everybody knows, I'm here because I was in ELSA. I did an economics undergraduate degree. After which I did my MBA from IIM Calcutta, and then worked for many years in different organizations. And I was always basically, corporate life was what my life is all about. And it was only when we finally moved to Manila that I actually stopped working. I wasn't working full time there at all, and that's when I really got into my own and enjoyed traveling and making friends and all of that. And that's when I sort of figured out that I love sort of just basically traveling and understanding different cultures, etc. And even when I was in Manila, I joined this thing called the Museum Volunteers Program, which is basically all about trying to understand the history of the Philippines. And I think that sort of set the base for me to make a move into China. And it actually happened when I was visiting my daughter in Florence. And one fine morning at 4 o'clock, my husband calls me and says, hey, we're moving to Shanghai, and can you cut short your trip and come back? And I was actually quite excited because, even when we were living in the US, for some reason, I wanted to go and live in China. And, it was just one of those, thoughts you don't really pay much attention to. But I've got to say that when we went to China for a pre-move, and we landed in Shanghai, and driving from the airport into town, it was quite there was this whole concrete jungle of these freeways, and all the signs were in Chinese, and everybody spoke Chinese. I mean, nobody really, very few people spoke English. And even like, like proper nouns, like you couldn't really get by and ask somebody, hey, where is Starbucks? Like even proper nouns have Chinese names. So for example, Starbucks is Sheng Baka. If you want to know where McDonald's is, says Mai Dang Lao. So, every name, it's kind of, I didn't realize that until I went to China, that this is how they were. So it was a very different experience for me. But when I went there for the pre-move, I was like, okay, it's going to be tough, but how we all are, right? You kind of just jump into things and you say, okay, fine, I can manage. So that's really the start of my time in Shanghai. And you know what I'm going to do now, guys? I'm going to share my screen with you because I put together a little PowerPoint presentation through which I'll take you to the to this chat talk of mine. So just bear with me for a minute. So actually, I had some embedded videos in this that I wanted to play, and I'm going to try playing this. And if you can't hear the volume, I will just skip that slide. But the first thing that I wanted to share was that there are some things that let me try this video actually. Then I'll talk through this. Right.
Can't hear the sound, Suki.
Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay, I'll continue.
Charter in 1924.
So the reason I wanted to play this for you was this was actually something that was put together a couple of years back in China to celebrate Tagore's 100 and I think 98 to 88th birthday. And that was one of the things that hit me. I mean, like in India, having lived here for a bigger part of my life, you of course we all know Tagore and we all know how important it is, but he's somewhere at the periphery of your mind and you don't really pay attention to that. And it was really interesting for me to go to China and find that he was such a big part of contemporary China's notions of India and what they've taken from India, that people actually celebrate them. There are plaques about Rabindranath Tagore everywhere, and so on, right? But anyway, to sort of get back to how I'm going to be talking to you, what I'm going to be sharing with you guys, and basically I'm going to take it through three parts of it. One is through the everyday observations that you see when you're living everyday life in Shanghai or China. Then your recent historical ties with them, and also ancient ties. So actually, the a relationship between China and India goes like way back to the first century, even pre first century AD. So I remember the first thing that happened when we all of us expats have to go through this cross cultural training. And my husband, of course, said, listen, you do it, I'm not going to do it, and just tell me what the woman says. And I found myself getting very impatient with the kind of things she was talking about. Like, she would say that, hey, don't get upset when people form. So when you find Chinese people spitting, and I was like, Indians spit too, so it's not a big deal. And then she would say things like, Chinese people don't form lines, they don't form queues, they go around pushing and shoving each other. And again, that was something that wasn't particularly new to me. So I realized at that point in time that there is so much in many of these small cultural things. There is a lot of commonality between India and China, and the interesting thing, however, is in terms of habits like this. I was sharing this with I think a couple of you the other day. like when it comes to, civic work and public stuff. Like I remember when I first came in there in 2014, we walked into a fairly upmarket mall, and the bathrooms were terrible. I mean, there was no water, there was no paper. It was quite terrible. And by early 2015, I think Xi Jinping had said that, listen, we can't have these places which are of public interest to be so dirty. And so he just had the edict which everybody had to follow. And by the end of 2015 and early 2016, I could personally see the difference. I mean, they were like, I mean, maybe the looms weren't all super dry or whatever, but they would be clean. There would be somebody handing out a piece of tissue paper, and they improved the standards of what was public, what public looms are all about. And similarly with trees, like, they also went through this entire 20-year period of development, right? So obviously there was a lot of urbanization, lots of trees were lost. And then Xi Jinping came up with this Green Millennium Project, where I think it wasn't just started with him; it started earlier as well. But he sort of took on this thing where they used local trees, and he said 1 billion trees for 1 billion people. And now you see that though from a top look, you can see a lot of concrete, sort of a concrete jungle, but it's very green. I mean, Shanghai is very green, Beijing is very green, most of the other cities are really green. So it's quite amazing how, despite the number of people there, despite the population, etc., they are able to get things like this done. Like, so to talk about the other similarities, for example, some of the things that this whole respect for older people. I mean, it's very much there. It's got nothing to do with the achievements of a person. It's got to do with just age, and just like how we as Indians, our culture is that we respect older people. It's very similarly they do too. And this is, if you see the screen I'm sharing, there is this. The one time I took my mother to, when she come visiting me, I took her to this tallest tower in Shanghai. And I wanted to quickly read out to you what I posted on Facebook. It was such a wonderful thing, because there was this another family. There was this guy with his wife and I think his mother. And when he came and saw my mom, he said he he looked at my mother and he was so happy, and he came and said, "Hey, how old is your mother?" And I said, I told him her age, and he said, "Oh, yeah, my mother is older than your mother." And I just had to take a photo of the two of them. It was so sweet, such to me, it was a wonderful moment where two cultures which seem very different, people look different, they talk a different language, but there is so much of similarity. So that is another thing that is that's very common to both of us. Like, and then the third thing that sort of struck me when I was there is our attitudes towards to authority. Like what happens is often is that even in India, and I think in China as well, I think we still have a lot of those feudal genes. So, for example, if there's somebody who if somebody's a boss, then they don't really expect the people who report to them to say no to them or to argue with them. And similarly, the people if I have a boss, I would tend to be very careful about how I disagreed with them. And yes,
a little bit louder.
Sorry, what, Malika?
A little bit louder.
Sure. So that's also very common between the Chinese and Indians. We all tend to be a little deferring to authority, and I found that very similar there as well. And many other cultural things which are common. So, for example, when you talk about religion, they have different religions. I mean, they are actually they're a secular country in the sense the state doesn't follow any religion. But they, through the Buddhist and the Taoist religion that they have, they also believe in like life after birth and all of that. And they also believe in, like anybody can follow any religion. I mean, for a long time, while during the Cultural Revolution, there really wasn't any, they weren't allowed to follow any religion. But after that, I mean, after China opened up again, I mean, you can find churches there, you can find, temples, gurdwaras, you can find mosques, and people are generally allowed to follow whatever religion they want to. Of course, the caveat is that until recently, when I think in 2017, early 17, that's when this whole movement against the Uyghurs happened, and which is kind of a pity. So I don't know much about that, but that's obviously something that's kind of crazy. But until then, it's been very much like any person can follow any religion. And the other interesting thing is, they love.
Okay, one sec.
Yeah.
Can you increase the volume on your computer of the mic?
Yeah, it is. It is a max.
It was Max, Molika. We made it Max, and it's very
Okay.
colorful. It's very clean.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to stop your slide share or so that we can see your face?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Is it a way I can
I
share
don't
my?
think so. Unless you do it from two devices.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Though I don't want
That's
to.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Go
Though,
ahead.
I would like to get back to my slide. Can I do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. So you can do that after that, right? When
Yeah.
you move to the next one.
Yeah. Okay, one second. Hold on there. Where was I? Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I also want to talk about how Chinese people, for some reason, they really they like Indians. They kind of think that Indians are very similar to them. And I remember when my mother-in-law had come visiting, and we'd gone to this place called Hangzhou, which is about a 30-minute train drive away, and I'd taken her to this place called the West Lake, which is a very famous tourist spot there. She was wearing a sari and a bindi, and for the first 40 minutes we weren't able to move. Like we got into the lake to walk, and she was thronged by people. I mean, people wanted to put their arm around her and take pictures, and I mean, we did a few, and then there were more and more people coming in, and they just wouldn't stop. So it was just they just and there is a place called the Bund in Shanghai, which is also one of those sort of tourist places everybody goes to, and it's the same thing there. You go there, if you happen to be wearing a sari, there's no way that you can you can get away without people sort of coming up to you and asking you about to take a picture, or asking, telling you, hey, this is so beautiful. And to me that was very interesting, because I remember visiting Hong Kong before, and they were kind of, to my experience, a little hostile towards Indians. But in China, it's they just think of Indians, just like you are, like they are like them. And it's interesting because they are also very, unlike Indians, very fascinated with the Caucasian white skin. And I remember this really funny story that I have this German friend. She had two sons. Okay, so one of them was this blonde guy, blonde and blue eyes, and one of them was a brown eyed guy. And this bar would call these guys, the older son who was blonde and blue eyed, and would come get him, and he would not have to pay for beer, nothing, because they just wanted they thought having a white skinned guy there would sort of improve the image of the bar. And her poor younger son never got that opportunity, because we don't want you because you're brown haired and black eyed or whatever. Like, so it was a really funny thing. But as far as Indians were concerned, they were very much okay. You're like us. I mean, they just sort of thought that that we were like them somehow. I couldn't quite put my finger on why that was like. And the other thing that also I found very common between them and us was this whole thing about hospitality. Like, they're also very hospitable people. I mean, I remember once when my husband and I were in Xinjiang, and we were driving from one town to the other, and we were really tired. And we stopped at somewhere near a gas station, and the guide had gone in to ask for where we could get something to eat. And there was this family with a home next to the gas station. And when they saw us, they said, "Oh, Induren, come in." And they kind of call people from, they call Indians Induren. And they plied us with cups of tea and bread. And we really couldn't talk very much to them because they didn't know much English, and my Chinese wasn't up to a big conversation. But when the guide came, then they had these long conversations, and they were like super excited, and they wouldn't let us go. I mean, we kept saying, thank you, but they just wouldn't let us go. And it's not that they're only hospitable to expats or foreigners; they're also the same way with their own people. And it's just that in cities, I think, because it tends to be very difficult, they don't really, they don't really entertain the way we do, because the type of cooking is very different. But they are just very hospitable, friendly people. Like, um, so that's those are some of the common things that are there, that you find when you're living there. You, as an Indian, you just don't feel out of place, or you just don't feel that it's a the culture is very different, despite the fact that it just so superficially everybody looks so different, and the language is so different. But it's just, you just feel very much, I just feel very much at home. And I think when you meet a lot of other Indians who've lived there for a while, you'll find that they share the same experience. I mean, even this whole thing about food, and everybody has a big hang up कि अच्छा Chinese food कैसे खाएंगे if I'm vegetarian. But that is such a such a misconception, because there is a whole lot of vegetarian food choices out there. In fact, if you look at the standard meal that a Chinese person has, there is like this much of vegetable and this much of noodles, and then this much of a meat, and you can dispense with the meat altogether, like, so it's really interesting. Like, and even if you go to, like, for example, you go to the temples out there, what you'll find is, the way they worship. I mean, before you go into the main temple place, they have this sort of block, and the reason why they have this block, which you're supposed to step over, is because it gives you a moment to center yourself and to sort of breathe in that you're entering into sort of a spiritual place. Very similar to how we are when we go into a temple. And then even in the main courtyard, there is this huge incense stand, and everybody takes an incense, lights it up, and then does a little prakshanam around this incense stand, very similar to how Hindus pray in temples. So all of that is really, really similar to how all of us perceive things in our. I mean, and we live our own lives. Like, hang on, okay, let me just get this.
So Geeta has a question, Suki. Do you want me to take some questions now, or do you want to go through the whole thing?
Sure.
So Geeta says, did they allow you to move around the country freely, or were some places out of bounds for foreigners? And did you feel the government is spying on you at all times?
So to answer the first question, could move around absolutely freely. There was no problem. There were only some places, like, for example, if you go to Tibet, you had to get a pass, but there was no problem in getting the pass. You just had to apply for it. Similarly, to go to Xinjiang, you had to get a pass. But there were some places out of bounds, not just for foreigners, but even for Chinese. Like, for example, in Xinjiang, there's this absolutely beautiful place called Lop Nor, which is a desert. And when I was researching for my trip to Xinjiang, I had found out about this Lop Nor, and I really wanted to go there. And there's a story this professor had written about his trip there, Chinese professor. So I emailed him and I said, hey, listen, can I talk to you, because I'd like to go to the Lop Nor. But I think it was accessible to tourists once upon a time, but then they had burst their they had done the nuclear testing in Lop Nor. So after that was completely out of bounds for everybody, not just foreigners, but the average Chinese person as well. But by and large, there was no problem. I mean, you could get about. And in terms of people spy on you, I know friends of mine have told me, who lived there for many, many years, have told me that yes, they tap your phone. You can sometimes hear the click on your phone. But, I mean, I have been there for 5 years, and I don't know whether my phones were tapped or not, but it made no difference to me. I mean, it didn't stop me from doing anything. And I think, for example, if you say, like, for example, all of us expats use Facebook and, Netflix and all of that, because we all use a VPN. And you could ask, like, why? I mean, the Chinese government is they smart, and why would they let people use VPNs? And it's just because they are smart. I mean, they kind of figure out, okay, who is going to be, going to cause a problem for us and who is not. And they are by and large quite pragmatic about it. So to say, listen, these guys are not going to let them be happy with the little Netflixes and their little, Facebooks of the world. It doesn't matter, So I think, I'm sure there must be. I mean, I don't know, honestly, to answer your question. There are people who have said, yes, they are spying on you, but I don't know. And it made no difference to my life. I mean, I could say or do anything. It didn't matter. I could complain about the Chinese government or about how stupid some system was. I could say it publicly, and nobody would really come back after me. So, and I remember listening to this podcast of one of these girls who's studying in the university there, and somebody had asked her, like, can you talk about things like Tiananmen Square with other people? And she had a very valid point in that people there will trust you. Generally, they tend to be untrusting of the government. For sure, everybody, they generally tend to be untrusting of everybody, like whether it's a government or whether it's business or whatever. And then, so they will talk about these things if you're really good friends. I mean, if you get to know them very well, then there's no holds barred. They talk about anything. If they don't know you too well, then they won't even get into discussions about politics, etc., because they don't want to get involved. So it's like that. I mean, and I guess in many ways it's similar here, right? I mean, how many of us actually talk deep politics with people who we don't know very well, especially these days? I mean, earlier we could, but I think these days it's very politicized though.
And in any case, I think typically when you're in a foreign country, you tend to, you technically should stay away from those topics till you don't know how you align yourself with the person you're speaking to, right? So
yeah, well, I mean, I think I tend to not be that cautious. So I'm kind of, wear my politics in my sleeves.
So no, I mean, typically in initial cultural trainings that are given to expat populations, that's normally one of the things that, stay away from politics and religion.
Yeah, I think also, it makes a difference what you do. Like, for example, I wasn't working there, right?
Right.
So it was easy to me for me to
Yeah, I
go.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if I was working, maybe I'd have to be more careful and cautious. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So just to quick time check, we are 4:25. So
Oh
just
my God, how much time do we have then?
another 15 minutes.
All right, let me quickly
20. So
run
that's
through.
why I thought I'd
Yeah, I can sort
tell
of
you.
talk about this forever, but I'll just
Yeah.
stop. Yeah. Let me. Okay, listen, I'm gonna skip this what's this called, this slide. It basically was a slide we talked about how important to God is, and this is something about what Xi Jinping said. But because this video is not working great, I'm just going to skip this slide, and because we don't have much time, and we've also sort of talked about him earlier. But to come back to recent historical time, Bollywood has always been super popular in China, right from 1955, when the Raj Kapoor's Avara, who was played in a film week in 1955. And at that time, I think Chinese people didn't really have access to many outside movies, etc., and they loved it because it was a socialist theme. The Raj Kapoor was a real good-looking guy. The movies were really great, and it was a huge hit. But then when the Cultural Revolution happened, it was banned along with all other films. But then again, when China opened up again, students whose parents remembered Avara Ho, brought it back, and they had all these cultural festivals where they played this movie Avara Ho, and I think from that the love of Bollywood happened. And Amir Khan is like especially popular. He sort of called I think Me Shu, Me short for Amir and Shu short for uncle. And his films like Three Idiots and what's the other one? Yeah, The Bang or something. I remember. Or Dangal, sorry, Dangal were very 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 popular because they all have these themes around. Family issues and education system, and the education system there is very similar to ours. Like, you must have heard this classic term called tiger moms, right? But the Chinese,
Hmm.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's so similar to Indians. I mean, even Indian
Right.
moms and dads are super like paranoid about their kids, and push them hard to achieve, and it's the very same thing over there. And similarly, I think this movie of what's her name? I forgot. Yeah, the Rani Mukherjee had this movie called Hichki, and that was very popular as well. And it was called the Chinese version was called Ge Ge Lao She. So that was also like very popular. So here you can see how these people are thronging for the premiere of the Dangal, the movie. It's like so Hindi movies
So the
tend to be
movies were dubbed or subtitled?
subtitle. Yeah, so they were- and so they but the people are very very popular. I think recently the popularity has gone down a bit because I think they also tend to say, okay, if a movie is really good in terms of story, they like it. If it's not, then they may not necessarily like it very much. So I think recently, and also with COVID now, any case movies have sort of taken a hit. The whole movie going thing has taken a hit. um, and then I think the last thing I very quickly want to talk to you about is the ties of religion. So it was very interesting to me when I went there because I mean, Buddhism came from India, but I didn't realize how there's so much about Buddhism. I only learned after going to China. Different streams of Buddhism, whether Mahayana Buddhism or Theravada Buddhism, etc., etc. I only learned all that in China. And if you actually go to there are these grottos they have over there, these ancient places which have been built, sixth, seventh, third century AD, etc., etc. And if you look at the screen on the left, it says God called I always find it very difficult to pronounce him, is Avalokiteshvara or something. He's the god of compassion with 1,000 hands. And what is really interesting is that when you go to one of these particular grottos, you'll see that whatever was built after the 8th century, before the 8th century, all the sculptures have very Indian features. Like all the gods are they look completely Indian, they look Hindu, they just don't look like the Chinese. But if you start looking at the same sculptures, the same god made after like maybe the 13th century or the 14th century, they all have Chinese features. So it's so fascinating to see that in the same place, like you go to a place called Datsu, it's a UNESCO site, and it's got these fantastic carvings. And as you see, the older ones are all Indian looking goddesses, and as you see the newer ones, they're all Chinese looking. And in fact, this particular god was because when until the time the Indian impact was still there, was a male god, and then eventually now it's more like a female god because all these virtues of compassion, etc., are more female, and so it's she's worshipped as a female goddess. I mean, a goddess really. Her name is, I think, Kuan Yin or something. People still worship her like that today. Like, and you see this image on the right. That's really interesting because there's a place called Chonjo, which is a town in the sort of it's an industrial port town, and in 1930s they discovered this. They discovered this. There's a temple that people will even today go and pray. It's in the center of that town, and you see that actually there's a murti of this Vishnu out there, and you'll actually see on the wall there are these inscriptions and stones of to do with that particular god. And there are so I think this all came from trade that happened in the in the 11th century or whatever, between South India and China. And there was a monk who translated stuff from the Sanskrit to Chinese, and there is evidence of all of that. And even today they're finding more and more they're finding more and more evidence of that. Some of it is all in museums, but there are still people who go there and pray. They don't know they're praying to an Indian god, but they just think it's a Buddhist god and they pray to that. So it's really, really fascinating to see that. Um, and then the last thing quickly I want to talk to you about is this whole thing, the commonality between these two ancient health systems. One is the traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. And I've always loved Ayurveda. I'm not a specialist at it, but I always believed in it and think that if somebody is a good Ayurvedic doctor, he can help you like no allopathic doctor can. And it's similar to traditional Chinese medicine. They have the same ways that they approach things. I mean, they also, in Ayurveda, the way they diagnose you by looking at your pulse. It's the same thing in traditional Chinese medicine. In both of these things, treat you not for your disease, but to treat you as a person as a whole and a system as a whole. The whole philosophical basis, the 5 elements are common to both traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. What is really interesting in China was that when the Cultural Revolution happened, and Mao wanted to basically do away with anything to do with the imperial system. So all of these really good doctors were sort of sent off to the farms and to just be peasants. So, but it didn't happen in Hong Kong, right? So even today, Hong Kong actually has far more practitioners and clinics and even stores where they sell these medicines. China doesn't have that, even though it's basically a Chinese treatment thing. But it is slowly growing, and I actually have a TCM doctor who was very, very good. And we used to have long conversations about the commonality between these two types of treatment, and even the herbs they use. I mean, obviously that they're not all the same, but there's a lot of commonality between all of them too. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. There's lots more I can talk about, guys. I can talk about the food, I can talk about tea, but I'm going to stop here and give everybody a chance to ask any questions or whatever.
Yeah, that's great. So thanks. That was really interesting. And, ever since you moved away, of course, the world's perception of China has changed. And the relationship everybody has with China has changed. I was wondering if you wanted to kind of, do you think your experience would have been different if you were living there now? Or, do you have any insights from your friends back there?
So, so here's the thing that I wanted to say is that, I think about it sometimes. I talk to my friends there. And the interesting thing is that though here a lot of the media and a lot of the propaganda is very anti-China, it's not the same in China. I mean, Chinese don't think any worse of Indians because of all this hassle that's happened in the last few weeks. I mean, I mean, they see very much as as a politics to politics, global, that sort of stuff. But on the ground, people are not really. They don't look at Indians with any great degree of hostility, or it has made no difference to them. I mean, the changes that have happened largely are more to do with COVID because of
that's what I meant.
Some people got stuck outside. Yeah, have got stuck outside of China and weren't able to get back. And also businesses have sort of have had this COVID effect. But apart from that, I mean, life in China, and my friends are largely in Shanghai. Life for them is more or less back to normal. Like they all have this QR code which they have to, everybody is mandated to have, and they can go anywhere they want to, provided the QR code shows that they're healthy. And so people are back to a normal life. I mean, they go out and they eat and they do everything how they lived their life before. Like some people have had to close down and minimize their businesses, but that's there for sure. But that's not, it's not that everybody's had that issue. Like it's just some people have had it. Like, and otherwise people have been online. I mean, I was talking to somebody about schools and what are they doing, and they've just very seamlessly moved on to online lessons, and they're all that way fairly well equipped. Like, it's not that schools they don't have computers and all of that. In that sense, they don't have this very big divide that we have. It's there to a degree, but not the great divide that we have over here. So yeah.
You did briefly mention about the food. Did you quickly want to just tell us, give us a basic understanding of? You had mentioned that it's very much like India in the sense that each state has its own.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, like again, like I was like this typical person who thought there was only one or two kinds of Chinese foods, and I went then discovered there are actually 8 major cuisines. Apart from which there are these sub cuisines, like it's not really state wise, but they're just cuisines. We say north, south, east, west, etc. And so, for example, interestingly, like like how in India the south eats more rice and the north eats more wheat. It's very similar there as well. The south of China eats more rice and the north of China eats more wheat. So when you go to the north, like when you go to Mongolia, Xinjiang, etc., their noodles are made of wheat, while here the noodles are made of rice, and they eat more rice. There they eat more breads. They actually in Xinjiang is very Mid-Eastern kind of food. So they actually have naans and a naan equivalents and things like that. Like, and then like for example, Shanghai's cuisine is is a little sweet. And while if you go to a place called Hunan or Chongqing and all that, is like super spicy. And they have the same sort of, like we have all these five or six tastes, right? In the Indian cuisine, we have like sweet, sour, spicy, astringent, etc. They have all of that, and they have one called I forget the name. It's umami. So this is thing called Sichuan pepper, and if you eat that pepper, your mouth is like numb. I mean, you can't taste anything. So actually, for the people who don't know, they actually eat the pepper and then die. But if you know, you're supposed to just not take the pepper out and eat it. Like, so that was very interesting because that's, and I have a book on every type of cuisine possible. There is another province called Yunnan down south, which is bordered by Laos and Cambodia, and their food is very influenced by that. So it's very similar to Thai food, Cambodian food. They use a lot of those kind of spices, and that's also uniquely Chinese. So it's just an amazing an array. And honestly, you can be vegetarian in China every single day of your life and be eating something different. I mean, I gotta say, but I mean, despite my love of China, there is nothing like Indian food and the variety of Indian food. There's no two ways about that. Like, but China also has a wide variety of different types of cuisine.
So did you manage to learn all the 8 types?
Yeah. I mean, no, I mean, I have my favorite recipes from all of them. One I don't touch. Like I don't touch Shanghai food because I find it very sweet, so I don't like it very much. But the typical Indian Chinese is actually Taiwanese food, which is sort of something like Shanghai. Yeah. So that's
Indian Chinese is a class apart of itself.
Yeah.
So we have some questions from the group. And Madhulika, do you want to turn on your video? And your video is already on, but you want to ask your question?
I think Madhulika's an audio.
You're Neelu, you need to unmute her.
I think she's still mute.
Yeah. So while you were there, I had seen a picture of yours where, the hills and the deserts were all layered in multicolors. And you had said, yes, that is a place which is very different. So is that something you remember about?
I think that must have been Xinjiang, because that Xinjiang is such a vast geography, and so if my memory serves me right, that place has got deserts and hills, and the way the sun, and I think, if my memory, I think the way the sun sets on it, it has these different colors because of the vastness and the way the sun plays on that sand out there. Like, and in fact, the interesting part of that particular region is that, you know, they actually have a China, like India, has only one time zone, despite the geographical width of that country. So actually, in Xinjiang, they have something called Beijing time, which is a regular time, and they have their own time, which is 2 hours behind Beijing time. So when you go there, it's very confusing because, you know, you kind of have your clock on Beijing time, and suddenly it's different because obviously it's so far west that they actually should be having a second time frame. But I think that's probably what it is. Like, because I think that the other thing which is like that are these rice terrace fields in down south, but I don't think those have colors. So probably Xinjiang. Right? But by the way, I have the world's worst memory, so don't ask me questions like this.
How many time zones do they have?
Sorry?
Time zones. How many time zones do they have? Oh, it's only one? Oh, okay. So except for Xinjiang, which follows a different time zone.
Yeah.
Okay. Ishita had a question. Ishita, you want to turn on your video?
Yeah. Hi, Suki.
Hello.
Hi. Wasn't language ever a barrier? Did your kids go to school there?
No. I went there way past when my kids had gone off, left home.
Okay. And wasn't language a barrier?
So how should I say this? So the thing is, first of all, I tried to learn. I got a teacher to teach me, and you know, I didn't find the problem at all because I had all the apps on my phone, and anytime I needed to tell a guy something, I would just look at my phone and, you know, and say it out to him, and they're very forgiving. I mean, they kind of understand that you're a foreigner, and then they will just, from the context, put two and two together, and you can get by. Like, so it's not a problem really. Like.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you can't have deep, long conversations with people if you don't know Chinese, but you know, I had a part-time helper who was completely spoke only Chinese. She didn't understand English at all, but she was super bright, and I managed to get her to do everything without even without really knowing that much of Chinese. Like, so it's not really that. I mean, it's only, I feel, you know, if you're working and you have to have a complicated, you know, work discussion with people, then you probably will need Chinese. But you know, to that, I knew more Chinese than my husband did, and he was the one working there, and he never. So
what is the difference? Like, they say Mandarin and Chinese. Are there different languages?
Cantonese and Mandarin.
Yeah. So basically, like, for example, like even in Shanghai, Shanghainese is a different language, and Mandarin is a different language. Mandarin is like the country's language, right? The interesting thing is that though they have different languages, like Shanghainese is different, spoken it's completely different, but the written script is the same for all of them.
Oh, okay. Unlike India.
And yeah. And the other interesting thing, I mean, like, you know, like all the Chinese languages are multi-tonal, right? Like they have 4 tones. So, for example, you know, I mean, the word MAI, it means buy, and it also means sell, depending on where the tone is. So it's really interesting because you could say, if you say my, it means buy, and if you say my, it means sell. And if you get mixed up and you're in a wholesale market, good luck to you. And you know, I had this friend from Mizoram, and she used to actually live in China before, for a while before I ever moved there, and she was able to pick up Chinese so easily because, you know, all the northeastern languages are also multi-tonal languages. It's very easy for them to pick it up. I think the biggest problem is for people like us who think in a single tone.
English, probably.
Yeah, it's very hard. But you know, for all of us who are taking Kannada lessons, the structure of the grammar is very similar to apna Hindi, Kannada, Tamil, all of that. Right? So I remember when I was taking Chinese lessons, it was in English, but it was easier for me to think in Hindi, to convert a sentence in Hindi and then convert it into Chinese, into Mandarin.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Charu had a question. Charu, you want to turn on your video? Yes. Charu, Neelu, will you unmute her?
Yeah, I have unmuted actually Anuradha.
So everyone's allowed to unmute themselves now.
Yeah,
you can unmute yourself and put your video on.
I kept Anuradha ready.
Okay.
Yeah, Charu.
Yeah, can you hear me? No.
Yeah.
Am I the one on? I just wanted to know about the martial arts. It originated in China, didn't it? So
listen, I have no clue about the martial arts.
I see, okay.
Yeah, I didn't.
Because they were the health benefits of Tai Chi and, generally that they
Yeah,
meditated due to that. It was good for
yeah,
the
yeah.
body and soul.
To China from Kerala.
Yes, I was about to say that.
Kalaripet.
Kalaripet.
Okay.
It
Yeah,
went from Kerala.
Yes,
so interesting. No, I wonder when it went to China from Kerala.
yes.
So it didn't originate there in China.
No,
Okay.
Yeah, very interesting. Right?
Yeah.
Kung Fu and Tai Chi are both from Kerala.
Oh, is it? I didn't realize that. I didn't know.
Same movements, actually.
Must be the 8th century one, the story that Suki told us.
Yeah, you never know because there were lots of trade from South India to China. Maybe it went like that. Who knows? Like, there's so much of history that's still not discovered, right?
Okay.
We managed to unmute Charu's.
Charu?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Suki, I was wondering what it's like to do business with the Chinese. So, any insights around that?
Yeah. So basically, I had lots of friends over there who were businessmen. I've been there for years and years and years. Okay. Um, I think that first of all, and many people who had business partners, Chinese business partners. Um, I think that there's this the whole value for money, sort of I don't know what to call it, like the Gujarati instinct is very similar in China. So, I mean, for example, I don't think it's very difficult for people to partner with Chinese people and set up a business. There is a similar culture, there is a similar understanding of how to do business, and business sort of thinking mentality is very similar. Right? So I mean that's what I mean I have a limited exposure to it because I'm not a business person myself, but my friends who are business people have told me that it's not it's they all have Chinese business partners, and it's not very they find that once they once they've got the language issue sorted out, it's easy to partner with them, right? And it brings me to an interesting thing because there's this whole reputation that Chinese products have, like terrible quality, etc., etc. But if you speak to Indian business people in China, this is what they have to say. This is what they say, that listen, if you pay peanuts, you'll get monkeys, So to people who want to keep on negotiating and bargaining down, what the Chinese people do is saying, okay, fine, if this is all you want to pay, this is the quality you'll get, and then don't grumble about it. But for people who are happy to pay for good quality, they will give you very good quality products, right? So that's and I think that's true here also, right? I mean, we also tend to if you have the money, build really good products, right? But the other interesting difference, I think, between us and them is that they're very, very disciplined. I mean, they're very disciplined people. They are very focused, and a lot of support given by the government. Honestly, like the government, I think, has figured out that they need to create an infrastructure for people to pull themselves up, and they make sure that they give them that interest or that help. Right? I was thinking of sharing with somebody before this in another call about what they did for agriculture. But like for example, the agriculture productivity in China even today is far lower than that of the US. But I think what Chinese figured out that they don't want to go the way that the US has gone, because they want to learn from their lessons and make sure that the soil degradation, etc., is not as bad as it is. It shouldn't get bad. So what they do is they have this agricultural scientist who goes and spends 8 months with every farmer to teach them over 2 seasons how to manage to make sure your soil still stays fertile, etc. And they're happy to give up that bit of productivity so that long term the soil still stays fertile and fine. And then what they figured out is, for some months there will be no agricultural income, and so they've trained these farmers with something else, with either like something to do with tourism or some other things, so that through the year they're earning something, right? So it's very interesting. I mean, they're a corrupt government. There's no two ways about it. They're as corrupt as anybody else, but they don't let the corruption pull cooler in their own feet, if you know what I mean. They don't. They make sure they're not affected by the people aren't affected by. Like for example, they also have the same tendering system, but the tendering system will never be that. That basically, at the end of the day, you'll have good quality stuff. So their roads are great quality. The metro is great quality. They just keep they do a really good job at that. Like.
Thank you.
Neelu had a question. Neelu, you want to come in?
Yeah, Suki, just like, what I really want to know, like, what are the things which you have got into your household? Like, for example, in the kitchen, some dishes which has become a part of the routine, like the kind of, like in Japan, I know that, there are very many things which have become part of our household, so do share with us a couple of things which are very Chinese in your house.
Sure. So first of all, my big love for tea. I always loved tea even before going to China. And when I went to China, I discovered this even bigger love for tea because there's so many different kinds of tea. So there's a particular tea called a pu'er cha, and it is the only tea that's not grown in a bush. It's grown from a tree, and there's a particular kind of pot made from a particular kind of clay that you should really make it in that. I mean, you can make it in anything you want to, but the best quality will come from that pot. So I have that and two or three of them. So in case one breaks, I have some more. So I've got these supplies of that tea and I have it every single day. You are supposed to have it after every meal, and it's really expensive. So, you can actually take like a bit of it and then you can use it for up to 20 times, the same tea. You can actually strain it 20 times. And you're supposed to have it after every meal, and it sort of, takes care of your metabolism and all of that. And I've seen how effective it is, right? So for sure, tea is a big thing. I've got loads of different kinds of tea sets and made of different kinds of clay, etc., etc. And then I have the famous Chinese cleaver, the big fat cleaver. And the interesting thing is when you go to supermarket to buy the cleaver, it's behind lock and key. Like, they don't keep it out. Like, you have to tell them, boss, I need to buy the cleaver, and only then you can buy it. But otherwise, they also use the same big wooden trays to chop things. They also use woks to cook. But I didn't get too many of those because I already had those from India, so I didn't really need to get that. But I got this whole love for eating lightly cooked vegetables, where the flavor of the vegetables actually comes to you instead of being, cooking them to death in masala. So I'm not to say I don't love Indian masalas. I love them. I make Indian food, as everybody knows. But I love the Chinese light touch cooking as well. Like,
Ritu, hi. Ritu's here. Ritu, you wanted to ask Suki a question?
Yeah. Hi, Suki. How are you?
Hi there. How are you, ma'am?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to find out about the freedom of expression. If there's any, sort of, global news being censored, and what is the impact on then society? Is there any social regression that's happening? Because that's what one hears, where there is no freedom of expression, it has an impact back on the society. So what do you say about that?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question that I get asked all the time. And the thing about it is that, I think the government has a sort of very clear lines about what is okay and what is not okay. Okay, so there's a lot of freedom to, and it depends on who it is. So you will find there'll be some political fellows who get knocked off and bumped off and like put into jail and all of this stuff. But for the Aam Janta, there is really, and like, for example, this friend of mine was telling me, like, and by the way, my experience is limited to conversations I have with other people if I'm not part of a work life or part of a university life. But for example, I know people who are studying in university, in an international university, and you would imagine that over there, they are even more careful because it's an international crowd, Chinese professors, but they're very open. You can talk about anything. You can talk about all kinds of issues and bring it up as a conversation, and that is encouraged. It's not. I should say it's not frowned upon. It's allowed, and even the professors are not hauled up for talking about that. In my personal experience, I've had, for example, my driver once was very bugged with the local city guy. It was something to do with parking. I don't even remember what the story was. And I was like, why are you so angry about it? And he said, oh, madam, I can't tell you anything and all because these people are so bad, but they'll catch you along. And I'm like, what's going to happen? And then he just didn't say anything. But like my monsieur, the lady used to come for a massage. She used to be very vocal and she used to say, look, this is what they're doing and this is what they're not doing. And it isn't, like I said, China isn't all wonderful. I mean, they do some very stupid things as well. But I think the thing I think is they're very pragmatic about what they stop and what they don't stop. I think if they realize that if they become too authoritarian, then there will be an uprising, and they don't want that. So they kind of, at least so far, they've been very careful about how and where they put down things. So people generally, I mean, the Chinese don't feel to a large. I mean, the average Chinese doesn't feel there's no freedom of speech, or I can't say what I want to. Nothing like that. They're all very I can say what I want to. Like,
so do you think, I mean, is it true that, as you go in school, that the people are doctrined not to express too much or not to voice their opinion too much? Because, if the society is free, as you grow up, you tend to do that. And you were saying that, the government is very clear on what is accepted and what is not accepted. So is there some sort of, right from school, the children are taught to think in a certain way, not to, question too much, or, what the entitlements or rights are?
No, not at all. So the thing about it is there are two aspects. Okay, one is this whole business of not questioning authority. That is very much there. I mean,
that's what I was talking about.
No, so like, so if I'm your like your teacher and I'm telling you this, boss, you better listen to me and don't ask me questions. That is definitely there. But that's not to do with the topic of conversation. It's not that they say you can't talk about this, but you can talk about this. It's not like that. Like, it's really the thing that, okay, if I'm a teacher and I'm telling you that this is the way things are, and you want to contradict me, then I don't look out very kindly. But maybe I can be a teacher who can tell you something which all of us will think is very acceptable to say, and that's fine. So it's not really a thing to do with the topic, the content. Is really more to do with the what should I say? Yeah, the way they all are in terms of the way they deal with authority. Like,
just questioning the authority, you were saying, is a clear no-no in democracy.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks.
I think that's I think it's more to do with the feudal nature of how they are. Like,
yeah. Anyway, thank you.
So we are just kind of running out of time. We have one or two more questions, but before we take those, I'll invite Sahana to announce the next session. Sahana? What happened to Sahana?
Can anybody hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, because it kept muting itself. Hi, so lovely session, Suki. I'm sorry I was a bit late for this, but I came straight from the meeting to hear you.
I saw you.
Shen. Okay, so I just wanted to invite all of you back again on Saturday to listen to Ishita. She is living the dream, and it will be lovely because so many of us have passions, but not all of us have the fortune, the courage to take that leap and live one's dream so well, so gracefully. So just to hear that, please come and join me as I chat with Ishita and hear her share her life. So I'll see you on Saturday at 4 o'clock. That's it.
Thanks, Sana. Suki, there are a couple more questions which I'm going to quickly run through just in the interest of time. Sure. Pragya Jain was asking if books are very expensive there. She has a question on social media which you already answered. She's asking, are books very expensive there?
No, they're not particularly expensive, but you don't get too many books. I mean, there's no like equivalent of going down to the store and buying a book. If especially English books are very rare. You don't find them there.
Shubha has a question that China has done some drastic social experiments like one-child policy. How has that affected society, the Aam Janta?
Well, a lot in some ways. That basically there are many of these tropes. Like there's this whole business of one of the something child left behind. I forgot what it is, because what happens is that people have it's a combination of the look for urbanization and having only one child. The child is left behind with the grandparents in the villages, and the parents come to the cities to live. And so those children tend to be very spoiled because the parents feel guilty, so they keep sending them back gifts, and they grow up with their grandparents who tend to be very indulgent of them. So that's had some effect on society. But that's changed, by the way. They've 2 years back they struck off that policy and made it back to being. And even earlier, the one-child policy was largely in the cities. You could actually have a second child, but you had to pay heavily for it. You had to pay taxes and all that stuff. And in the city, in the towns, in the villages, they didn't even follow it. Like people who had 3 children and 4 children, it wasn't really followed. That was really in the big cities that the one child was followed.
Sandhya had a question. What of China do you find in India now that you are back?
What of China do I find in India? Acupuncture.
All the books available. Your daily life, like you're finding India and China. How do you find
food,
China?
I guess food.
Food maybe. I actually
Mandarin oranges.
yeah. So it's a difficult question to answer. I think I've come back to when I've come back and I've been so caught up in the thing of settling down that I haven't really applied my mind to this question. So ask me next year.
Yeah. Monica, Preeti, dear
Preeti wanted to
school friend
share
of ours.
something. So, Preeti?
Yeah, hi everyone. So yeah, I just wanted to share the time when I went to China when Suki was there, and I have to tell you that she's an awesome travel guide. If you have to go anywhere with her, take her along. I mean, she goes in depth into everything. I saw so much of China through her eyes, and probably all of what 4-5 days total put together in over two trips. I went right from Hangzhou, saw the west side, the west lake, whatever.
Yeah.
Super performances there on the lake. She took me to the water town, which was so clean, though it was on the outskirts of China, but still so clean. She took me to Beijing. I think we also went to a wet market, Suki.
Yeah.
That was right.
Yeah.
But of course, we didn't see anything other than mushrooms and tofu. Plenty, so much of variety, I can't tell you. Thankfully, I didn't see anything else. So she really goes deep into anything, and she's great because she really understood China in a very different way. I mean, really deep way. And I think she really traveled during her time there, and it's so good. And I keep telling her, even when she was there, I was telling her, why didn't you organize these travel tours to China? But now I think that story's out. You should probably do the same for India now.
Thanks, Preeti. Just before we end, I wanted Suki, some of your friends are here. Monica, Mayuri, why don't you turn on your videos? It'd be lovely to see you guys.
I can't see them only.
Geeti, would you like to come
Hi,
in? And
how are
Suki,
you?
Geeti, your mother would like to say anything?
Isn't Mayuri there? I thought I saw Mayuri, unless she's left. Hi, Monica, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Mayu is here.
Hello. I was getting these directions to mute, unmute. So hi everybody, I'm Monica. Great to see you, Monica.
Hi.
And I'm sorry I got it a bit late, Suki.
No problem, Mona.
Hi, Mayuri. Lovely to see you. Where are you?
A while in Delhi. Suki,
Okay.
that was fabulous. Really well presented.
Thank you, Mayu.
and like Preeti, I had a wonderful trip there with Suki. And
Hi, Mayu.
Hello.
Very short though.
Yeah.
Very short, but at least some.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks everyone for joining us.
Where is Shubhda?
And I think we can turn off the YouTube now.